We have a lot of listener questions that came in. But just before, in the build-up to giving our predictions, now apparently, along with the questions, got a lot of comments, particularly aimed at me and the way I say Quartararo, which is apparently incorrect. And I'll be upset because none of you two have called me up on it. I say Quartararo, but apparently I should be saying Quattararo. But that doesn't. I feel like it's Bath. You know, if you're from the north or the south in the United Kingdom.
Mate, I tell you what, Harry, you're a commentator as well as I am, obviously. And the amount of times you get picked up for different names, for different ways that you say names. I mean, my favourite one has got nothing to do with a name. It's because I always call an engine. So everyone's kind of thinking, you know, it's an engine. No, it's not. It's an engine. Of course it is. I mean, I'm from Essex. It's the way different people speak. I mean, look at another mate of mine, bloody James Hayden, when he calls Kawasaki.
Yeah.
It's a Kawasaki.
Yamaha.
And he's a dyed-in-the-wool motorcycle man. So I take no bloody notice. Yeah, okay. I wouldn't say Quartararo personally.
It's funny. I don't normally say notice. It's just there was a lot in the last one because obviously he was the champion. And I thought, God, have I really been saying it that wrong? But then I thought maybe.
Well, you've gone through the honeymoon period. I'm sorry. Now you're getting criticism.
I'll do it. Maybe I should do it with a proper French accent. Then it becomes hard to say. But.
What was that?
Quartararo, Fabio Quartararo. That's how you should say it.
I remember when I first heard, we were talking last episode how Quartararo, that's how I say it. I wouldn't in any way say that's the correct way, but how he was a massive star in CEV before he came to Grand Prix. And I remember, we were all sort of talking in the paddock. We heard about this new kid coming up, and it sounded like a Spanish name to me, possibly because he was racing the CEV as well. And then said, no, he's French. And so I went to see a good friend of mine, Thomas Bajard, the French journalist, and he tried to spend about a minute getting me to pronounce it correctly. No. So I think I still have never been able to do it. But yeah, it's I think we need a native French person to actually give us the correct pronunciation.
Yeah, and then we'll still murder
Well, we've
it.
covered that off now. Let's see. Does he feature then, gentlemen? Before we come on to listener questions, we'll end with those. Let's get our predictions in there. And right now, it's continually not looking good for me. You two neck and neck, though, with seven points apiece if people have been paying attention to our point scoring process, because I haven't really. But Keith and Pete are well ahead of me. So have we got our top three? Who went first last time? I think I went first last time. So how about... Should we go with Pete first this time? Pete, give us your top three for this weekend.
It's not going to be very adventurous because I'm going for first pick. So I went with Bastianini last week, so I'm keeping that one as my bet payoff. So I'll go for a very boring Quartararo, Bagnaia, and Marquez, and I think we've explained why. But I think that Quartararo, he was so dominant earlier in the year. Bagnaia was second. Both of them have been the class of the field, and we're all expecting sort of Marquez to be up there this weekend. So, but I have to say, third place, depending on the tyre choice, there's a lot of riders that Oliveira, Miller.
Yeah, Oliveira's looking better last time.
It could be a big group. Yeah.
Keith?
Well, I actually did research on this because I'm fed up with being equal with Pete. I want to beat him now. But sadly, I've gone for the same three as him in a slightly different order. I mean, at one point, I sort of went Bagnaia, Quartararo, Marquez. Then I kind of thought Zarco in Portimao. He had a really good ride in Portimao 1. So I kind of thought maybe Zarco could get in there. But then again, he always bloody lets me down when I go for Zarco. So I'm going to cross him off. So I'm going Quartararo, Marquez, Bagnaia.
Marquez, Bagnaia. Okay. Well, now I had that exactly as well, Keith. But you know what? For good sportsmanship, I'm going to change mine. So I'm going to go for Quartararo and Marquez 1 and 2, and I'm going to go for Joan Mir in third because that's where he came last time. So and he can be a bit nifty in that Suzuki sometimes. So Mir is going to be my pick for third. So hopefully at least I'll claw some points back with that. But they're set in stone. Let us know yours in the comments below as well. We like to keep an eye on to see who's hot and who is not. And in the comments section, there has been some very nice messages, actually. I'm going to read one out, which is actually quite long, but it's a really nice message. And he asks a question as well. It's from Sean Naylor, who says, "Gentlemen, I just want to say thanks for the great podcast. For years, I was happy just to watch the races when I could. Then I couldn't miss a race. Then I went from watching free practices and qualifyings, and when that was enough, I found your episodes here on YouTube. I guess I am a MotoGP junkie now. Your podcast allows me to participate in a deeper conversation about the riders and teams I love, and I greatly appreciate that. If I was given the privilege of having a question answered during the podcast, I would ask your thoughts on this new generation's sense of mutual respect. I first started watching racing casually back in 1992, both GP and Superbike, and there seemed to be more aggression between riders then. Not all, but definitely for some of the top runners. You even still see that in the Rossi versus Biaggi era and somewhat during the Casey Stoner's time, but I'm very heartened to see the level of respect riders give each other these days. Seeing Bagnaia come out to hug Quartararo is one of my favourite images of the weekend, and Bagnaia was my favourite for the race, so I was suffering some serious disappointment. I love this about MotoGP today. Fierce battles on the track, respect in the paddock. Do you think this was an organic change, or am I remembering the old days differently to what they actually were?
Well, a long question, but thank you very much. I mean, a very intelligent and obviously, we're very pleased to have you with us, of course, and glad that you're enjoying it. But I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I put it down to education. I think the world has changed. I think that things have changed massively from a much younger age. I mean, I couldn't find my arse with both hands until I was bloody 50. It was, I feel inferior quite often with youngsters today. I think that they have so much more on their plate. They have so much more they have to deal with than I ever did in my time. And we're crossing into that situation. Yeah, there was a lot of aggression. I always say that people get into violence generally because they've not got the intelligence not to. An argument is an argument. You both argue as reasonably well as you can, and whoever hasn't won the argument loses without it turning into a fight. I always think that, violence generally, and I have to say that I've been in many a fight in the paddock and on the track, probably because I didn't have the brain power to be able to work it out properly. And it turns out into an explosion of aggression because you've got all that adrenaline and all that pumped up, fight in you that you want to convey, but haven't got the tools to be able to convey it. And I think kids today, through their education, through their families, are completely different to how they were in my day and the degrees since then. Obviously things have generally got better. You always find there's one arse in the pack, isn't there? There's always somebody in the pack that's a bit overly aggressive, both in your class, in your workplace, on the racetrack, wherever it might be. But generally, they get pulled back a bit now. They get called out. And I mean, social media, I think it goes too far in many respects. I mean, I am not a lover of the woke generation, as you might be surprised to hear, Harry. I cannot stand the way that, everything has to be the way some minorities want the majority to bend to their will. But I love democracies. I love the fact we live in a democracy generally and that we are moving forward. Things are getting better. You look at the world in some respects and it is better than it was back in the day. You look at a film that I recommended highly on Twitter, Missile from the East. It's about the Ernst Degner period, coming back out of the war into being a motorcycle racer and beyond that. Talking about it now has already sent the hairs up on the back of my hand, because and on the front, you might know. They're paws. But the point being is that we've moved away from, in quite fast time, relatively. In 50 years, things have changed massively. People have changed massively. We've integrated, socially with, the diversity and inclusion thing, which I hate the phrase of, but I love the concept of, is that, I live in a street that is, full of foreigners. Now, my old nan would have hated living here, but I love it because it is so diverse. You walk down the street and, you see and hear every different, make and manufacture of person. And I think that youngsters have grown up with that integration much better than perhaps we did. They are more reasoned in their thinking. They're more educated in their thinking. And I think that's where, the over aggression out on a racetrack has been tempered down a little bit because it's calculated. It's all thought about. It's all discussed. They've worked out everything. It's not a knee-jerk reaction on the racetrack to sticking your elbow in somebody's face or shoving them off the track like you. I can go back times where people have lashed out, kicked out, punched out on the racetrack during a race. I think I have, actually, when I think about it. Somebody puts a pass on you don't like, and you just ram it up the inside next time round and cause people harm. I remember Eddie Lawson kicking Christian Idden's dad, Paul Idden, at Spa because he'd got in his way. I'm behind. I nearly fell off laughing. I'd never seen anything so funny. Eddie Lawson went so far out of his way to put the boot into Paul Idden in a race, in a Grand Prix. One of the funniest things I've ever seen. And that's how it was back then. I mean, nowadays you'd have a race-long ban for it, and quite rightly. I mean, I'm not condoning that kind of activity. What I'm saying is that we've grown up, we've evolved, we are in a much, a better world than we were back in those days. Even though the competition on track has never been closer, has never been harder fought. We have got better behaved riders. I know that we've had some moments this year. And there will always be moments where someone gets a rush of blood to the head, the Fanatis of the world and the like, where, even he's managed to temper it down a little bit in recent years as he's grown up and seen the error of his ways slightly. It's a long answer. Is it any help? Was I rambling?
Well, I mean, you always ramble, but there's usually some good stuff in there somewhere if you listen hard enough. But I think thank you to Sean for sending in that comment and that question. It's really, really nice to see stuff like that, and hopefully, Sean, that does answer your question. Eddie Moore, always make sure you leave them on social media or on YouTube, and if you want to leave us a review, it really helps us if you leave it on Apple Podcasts. So just a little direction there. That really helps with the various algorithms and things like that. But let's carry on and go through a few more. Hoss, one for both of you, this one. A bit brutal. He's asked, who do you think least deserves their ride for next year? Bit brutal. Who wants to take that one first?
Oh, yeah. Over to you, Pete.
The thinking time. Quickly, think.
I'll tell you what, whoever sent that question in gets a point for being able to quieten both of you.
That was someone called Hoss on...
I'll give you a clap for that.
I'll tell you what I am pleased to see. I'm pleased to see Ika Lecuona has found his place in World Superbikes with Honda alongside Xavi Viejo. I'm pleased to see that he's found a good ride for him, because I feel like that was a bit of an unjust decision to boot him out of MotoGP next year. If this has sufficiently filled the void while you think of how to answer this question.
Yeah, then let me blow the internet up. Valentino Rossi.
Well, he hasn't got a ride.
Yeah, but he hasn't got a ride next year.
Yeah, we're talking about for next year.
Yeah, who least?
We're talking for next year.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
but still, ouch. So no, the question is who least deserves their ride for next year. So who's confirmed for next year and doesn't deserve it?
Do you know what? That's not even one I would go near for next year, and the reason for that is that you need to be in the paddock full time to see the potential in the people that we think maybe don't deserve it, and then they'll turn around and deserve it. Did Fabio Quartararo deserve the ride at Petronas when he won one race officially, two races if you take it for the one he was disqualified from? There's always going to be a situation where the management in teams at trackside are looking all the time through magnifying glasses at what riders are not just capable of on the track, but where their potential off track is, how they handle the pitfalls and the like in the paddock. It's a community that is constant, and they're always looking. I've always admired team management that have been able to make these picks out of some quite a large talented pool nowadays, and they've managed to pull out these little gems here and there. And I don't think I want to get involved in criticising anybody's choice for next year at this point. It's too early.
Yeah, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because there's nobody there in MotoGP that's there because they brought a lot of sponsorship with them, or something obvious like that, as maybe there was in the past, wasn't there? There were a few riders that you could buy your way in, also to Formula One. But I think now all the riders are there on merit. They've all proven they should be there. I mean, if you look at the championship standings, sure, you say, well, who's disappointed? You look at Rins in 11th, you look at Nakagami 15th, Alex Marquez 16th. But is that them, in the case of the LCR guys, is that them or the Honda? You know, you have to separate the two things in a way, and that's almost impossible to do because they've got to use the bike they've been given. The Honda is obviously a difficult bike to ride. They don't have the results this year that they had last year, so it's a bad year. Rins has fallen off a lot as well. You know, it's so difficult to say that people don't deserve their place. I think all of them. I think that's the strength of MotoGP. I mean, was it 15 different riders on the podium this year? I mean, that's 2/3 of the grid finishing on the podium. So it's. I don't think we're in an era where you've got people that are way off the pace, being lapped. We're not seeing that anymore, and that's the great thing about MotoGP at the moment. So I think all of the guys. I mean, Marini front row. You know, I mean, he hasn't had a great year. He was on the front row in Misano. So we're seeing speed from everyone on the grid at some stage. You know, there's not guys that are just dropping off out the back. So you need to see. I think we need to see next season get underway. And then what you're looking for, I suppose, is you're looking for a big gap between teammates. That's the most realistic gauge, isn't it? That if they've both got the same spec bike, that one guy is not, delivering on the same bike for the same team as the other guy. And I think, you could look at Quartararo. I mean, the other Yamahas are way behind, but there seems like Quartararo has found a way to use this bike and the other guys are still struggling. We've got Morbidelli injured at the moment. So we need to see what happens next year. Will this continue or will the other Yamahas catch up with him? But yeah, that for me, I can't see any obvious examples because, as I say, look at the LCR guys. They're next to each other in the championship. Now, that's not really a coincidence. But if one of them was way up in the top 4 or 5 and the other one was down, 16th, then I think you would say, well, what's going on there?
Yeah, well, come on, Hoss, who sent that one in. Bit brutal. Give him a bit of time before you chuck him out the door. Well, thank you for those questions. There's still some that we have in the backlog that we will endeavour to answer. Send them in all the usual ways as well. But that just about does it. Bang on the hour, just about, maybe with some editing to play with. But we shall return with you for the next time, which will be after Portimao next week. But the racing action kicks off, of course, or the track action kicks off from Friday this week in Portugal, and you can keep up to date with all the very latest as ever on crash.net. Any questions, send them in all the usual ways in the comments section on YouTube, tweet, Instagram or Facebook us. Just search Crash MotoGP, and please do leave us a review wherever you get your podcast, particularly if you listen on Apple Podcasts. It just really helps us with all the various algorithms, as I said earlier on. But we shall see you right back here next time. My thanks to Keith, my thanks to Pete. I've been Harry Benjamin. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.